I live in the middle of practically nowhere, about a 15-minute drive without traffic to the small town by us. When I was about fifth grade, my parents were at work. I was home from school and watching TV, so I get a call from an older guy saying I had a really nice blue shirt on. I asked how he knew that, and he laughed. I locked my doors to my house and closed my curtains, and the guy was laughing. I hadn't hung up the phone yet, and I was freaking out. The guy asked where my parents were, and I said my dad was taking a shower. He replies back by chuckling and saying, "Sure." I hung up the phone, called my parents, and told them about it. They called a police officer to come talk to me about it, and they patrolled our neighborhood for a couple of days. It was seriously horrifying. When I was in high school, an elderly lady I did not know called my cell phone while I was working, so it went to voicemail. I checked it an hour later on my break. She'd left a message with her full name, address, date of birth, and social security number, then said it was urgent and she needed a call back immediately. No idea who she thought she had dialed. My outgoing message at the time was, "Hey, this is so-and-so. Leave a message and I'll call you back." Nothing that could have been mistaken for a business line. I called back to let her know she dialed the wrong person and shouldn't be leaving her social security number in a voicemail. A different woman answered and told me I'd called her mother's cell phone and that her mother had passed away. I hung up before I could even explain why I called. When I was about 16 or 17, I answered the phone in the middle of the night. Landline cell phones weren't a thing yet. I picked it up really quick. I'm a light sleeper, so it wouldn't wake my mother since I assumed a late night call would be for me or my sister. I whispered, "Hello," and he whispered back. And it was a little weird, but I just assumed it was my boyfriend. He starts asking what I'm wearing, and all before long, we're having full on phone sex. It was pretty great, actually, but then a few days later, I was with my boyfriend and mentioned how that was fun on the phone the other night. He had no idea what I was talking about. So I had a cyber stalker for a number of years. It began in World of Warcraft because I would often talk trash on the WoW forums. I was in one of our server's bigger raiding guilds, and we were also well known for PvPing. Talking shit was just part of what we did. So this one guy who was kind of shitty but in a big guild in the other faction really hates me. Whenever I'd see him in a battleground or somewhere in the world, he'd focus on trying to kill me for hours on end. I found it comical. It was always followed by forum shit talking. I wasn't super protective of my identity. All my guildmates knew me. I was dating a girl I met on WoW, and so this guy eventually somehow finds out my name. After searching online, he gets enough info to find my parents' phone number. He calls them one night, and my mom, who was very ill, often was pretty out of it. She answers the phone. He tells her he's an old friend and asks for my number. Usually, my parents would never give that out, but my mom did in this scenario. My dad heard her do it and tried to get to the phone to stop her, but he was too slow. That's when the phone calls started. I'd let them go to voicemail, and he'd leave messages saying how he was going to come to town and meet me face to face. He'd text me links to YouTube videos he made about my family and friends, gross stuff about lighting my mom in her wheelchair on fire and pushing over a hill, and orgy gangbangs of my sister and cousin, and execution videos that he'd do. These weird voiceover commentary on describing how this would be me and my family. He'd send links to my friends on Facebook. I'd get the stuff removed quickly, but it was aggravating and creepy. So one night, I'm woken up in the middle of the night because my dog was really sick. I get up to take her outside. And I lived in a secure apartment building, and there aren't many good areas for her to use the bathroom. Just a few areas with patches of grass. I go over to one and my phone rings. I see the area code and I know it's this creep. It's the middle of the night and it pisses me off, so for the first time ever, I answer it. Now keep in mind that I knew this guy's name and the city he lived in. It was very far away. Well, over 1,000 miles. It would be quite a trip to come to the city I lived in at that time. So I answer, "Hello?"
Awfully late to have to take the dog out. Is the poor thing sick?
Followed by cartoonish laughter. I scan around and I don't see anyone, but this really frightened me. I lashed out anyway because I was sick of this shit. It had gone on for half a decade at this point. "Dude, what the fuck is your problem? Are you still pissed off of a video game? Surely you've grown up by now. You need to get over it and get a fucking life." His reply still haunts me to think about it.
Tonight, I won't be getting a life. I'll be taking one.
And then he hung up. I looked all around me. I saw no one. No lights, no suspicious cars, no movement, no noises. I hurried and took my dog back in the apartment and called the police. I filed a report and they told me I should call the police in the city he lived in and file one there too. If the call originated in his city, I needed to have it on file with their PD. I did it as soon as I got back up to the apartment. The PD in his town followed up with me and said they spoke to the man with that name, but the number was probably just a burner phone because he denied it and had a different phone number. They told me to file another report if it happened again. My PD did nothing after searching the area and not finding anyone. I asked them to check the hotel registries and such, but they seemed disinterested in putting that much effort. They treated it like a prank call, even though I said he threatened my life. I never heard from him again. I hope that maybe the police visiting him spooked him and he finally realized he was taking things too far. I also don't know if he was there that night, if he poisoned my dog somehow to get her sick, or if it was all a coincidence and lucky guessing. I have no idea. It creeps me to my core, even now when I think about it. I'll say this though, I really don't ever talk shit on the internet anymore. Partly because when I did, that I was young and immature, but also because you just don't know what kind of person you might be dealing with. I feel bad for calling this creepy, but I'll write it here anyway. In 2004, I was home on September 11th watching a documentary about United Airlines flight number 93, one of the flights that was hijacked and crashed. I had avoided watching anything related to 9/11 up to that point for reasons I won't get into. But I finally forced myself to watch some documentaries this one year to help process it. At some point, my cell phone started ringing with a number I didn't recognize. I never answer the phone when it's someone I don't know, so I waited for it to go to voicemail. But instead of leaving a voicemail, it rang again and then a third time. I finally answered, but it was silent on the other end, like it hadn't connected right. So I opened my laptop and did a reverse number search. The number was a landline from a home in a neighboring state, but I didn't know anyone who lived there. So at the end of the documentary, they listed the names of the victims on the screen, and one of the victims' names was the same name as the number I had just looked up. Don't want to say who, just out of respect. I figured it was a coincidence, but since my laptop was still open, I Googled him and ended up finding an article that listed an obituary and address, and I saw the address where his family lived matched the area I just looked up. I was starting to get a little weirded out, so I kept looking. I realized I was being kind of creepy at this point, and eventually I found a phone number for that address, and it was the same number I had just been called from. I triple checked everything to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Maybe the documentary had triggered some kind of emotional reaction or hallucination, but it matched. I even showed my roommate later, who confirmed that they matched. I never knew this person, and if anyone had access to my contact info from a list or something, it would have been my landline. I called the number back, but there was no answer, and I was never called from it again, so I'll never know. It was probably just a strange coincidence.